The Understudy. I got the call on a Tuesday. Rachel's dead, my agent said. No preamble, no softening, just those two words delivered with the particular flatness that meant she was already calculating what came next. They need you at the theater in an hour. I sat down on my bed, stood up, sat down again. What happened? They're not saying. Police are involved. A pause. You're going on tomorrow night, opening night. Can you do it? I'd been Rachel Ashford's understudy for 3 months. 3 months of watching from the wings, learning her blocking, memorizing her inflections, knowing every breath she took on that stage. 3 months of hoping, in the dark, shameful part of my heart, that something would happen, that she'd get sick, twist an ankle, lose her voice. Not this. Never this. I can do it, I said. The Meridian Theater was 112 years old, a jewel box of red velvet and gilt trim that had survived 2 fires and a bankruptcy. It was the kind of theater where you could feel the weight of every performance that had come before. The triumphs and the disasters, the standing ovations and the empty houses. Rachel Ashford had been perfect for Medea. Tall, striking, with a voice that could fill the balcony without a microphone, and eyes that made you believe she was capable of anything. I'd watched her in rehearsals and known, with the certainty that comes from years of being second best, that I would never be as good. And now she was dead, and I was walking through the stage door with her script in my bag. The cast was gathered on stage when I arrived. Some were crying, others stood in clusters, speaking in low voices. Director Martin Webb saw me and crossed to meet me, his face gray with exhaustion. Mira, thank you for coming so quickly. Of course. I looked around at the others. What happened to her? He shook his head. They found her in the dressing room this morning. That's all we know. His hands found my shoulder, squeezed. I know this is awful. I know we're all in shock, but the show must go on. The investors. I understand. And I did. This was a business. Tickets had been sold, money had been spent. Rachel Ashford was dead, and I was alive. And that meant I had a job to do. Tech rehearsal in 2 hours, Martin said. Full run-through. Can you be ready? I've been ready for 3 months. The first time I saw her was during the tech rehearsal. I was on stage, running the scene where Medea realizes what she must do. The terrible calculus of a woman who has given everything and been betrayed. The lights were hot on my face, the empty seats stretching out into darkness, and I was reaching for the emotion, trying to find something real to hold on to. And there, in the back row, someone was sitting. I stumbled over my line, squinted against the lights. Everything okay? Martin's voice came from somewhere in the middle rows. I thought I saw. I shook my head. Nothing, sorry. Can we go again? We went again, and when I looked at the back row, it was empty. Opening night. The house was full, partly for the play, partly for the scandal. Rachel Ashford's death had made the news. Promising actress found dead in historic theater. The kind of headline that sells tickets to people who want to say they were there. I stood in the wings, wearing Medea's robes, feeling the weight of every eye that would soon be on me. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. I had wanted this. God help me, I had wanted this so badly. The lights went down, the audience quieted, and I walked onto the stage. The first act went well. Better than well. There's something that happens when the fear breaks and the character takes over, when you stop being yourself and become someone else entirely. I wasn't Mira Vale, understudy, imposter, fraud. I was Medea, wronged wife, exile, mother, monster. During the intermission, I sat in my dressing room and tried to stop shaking. Someone knocked, one of the stagehands, bringing water, telling me I was doing great. Everyone was saying so. I nodded and smiled and waited for her to leave. When I looked in the mirror, there was someone standing behind me. A woman, tall, dark, wearing a white dress that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. I turned back to the mirror. Empty. Just me, pale and wide-eyed, staring at my own reflection. The second act. The famous scene. Medea holding the knife, making her impossible choice. I lifted the prop blade, dulled metal, harmless, and delivered the lines I'd memorized months ago. Words about love, about betrayal, about what it means to give yourself to someone who throws you away. And in the audience, I saw her again. Closer now. Maybe 20 rows back. A pale smudge in the darkness. A face I almost recognized. I kept going. What else could I do? I know what I am about to do is evil, I said, but my fury is stronger than my reason. The woman in the audience tilted her head. The movement was somehow wrong. Too slow, too far, like a bird rearranging something it didn't quite understand. I finished the scene, took my curtain call, accepted the applause that washed over me like a wave I didn't deserve. And when I looked for the woman, she was gone. The second performance, she was in the 10th row. I saw her during the opening monologue, just sitting there, while the people around her laughed and checked their phones and rustled their programs. She didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me with eyes that I couldn't quite see from the stage, but could feel, heavy, intent, waiting. I got through the show, barely. My performance was ragged, distracted, and Martin pulled me aside afterward. "You okay? You seemed off tonight." "Just tired. It's been a lot. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's a matinee." I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. The matinee. She was in the 5th row. I could see her face now. High cheekbones, dark eyes, a mouth that didn't quite sit right, like she was trying to remember how expressions worked. I knew that face. I'd watched it for 3 months from the wings. Rachel Ashford was in the audience, watching me perform her role. The days blurred together, performance after performance, and every night, every matinee, she was closer. Row 5, row 3, front row. Close enough that I could see the pallor of her skin, the strange stillness of her chest. She never breathed, never blinked, just watched me with those dark, intent eyes. The reviewers were spectacular. "Mira Vale delivers a Medea for the ages," one critic wrote. "There's a terror in her eyes that feels almost too real, a desperation that transcends performance. We are witnessing the birth of a star." They thought it was my acting. They thought the fear in my voice, the trembling in my hands, the wild desperation in my eyes was craft. It was survival. I tried to talk to her once. After the 8th performance, I walked into the empty theater and stood on the stage, staring out at the rows of empty seats. "I know you're here," I said. My voice echoed in the darkness. "I know it's you, Rachel. What do you want?" Silence. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry you're dead. I'm sorry I wanted your role. I'm sorry," a sound, from somewhere in the theater. Not footsteps, not words. Something else. A low, keening moan that raised every hair on my body. I ran. The 10th performance, she was on the stage. Not in the audience anymore. Standing in the wings, just out of sight of the audience, but fully visible to me. She stood there through the entire first act, her head tilted at that wrong angle, her hands making strange gestures that I couldn't interpret. I delivered my lines, hit my marks, smiled when I was supposed to smile, and wept when I was supposed to weep. And in the wings, Rachel Ashford's ghost made shapes with her hands that looked almost like words. Warning, danger, behind. I didn't understand. The 12th performance. She was so close now. So close. During Medina's final monologue, I looked stage left and she was there, inches from the light, her face twisted into something that might have been urgency. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her hands reached toward me, fingers spread, grasping at nothing. The audience couldn't see her, I was certain of that now. She was mine alone, my private haunting, my personal punishment for wanting what I shouldn't have wanted. "I'm sorry," I mouthed at her during a scene change. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." She shook her head, slow, deliberate. That wasn't what she wanted to hear. The final performance. Closing night. The theater was packed. Every seat sold, standing room only. The kind of crowd that only comes when something special is happening. The energy in the house was electric, expectant, alive. I stood in the wings wearing Medea's robes for the last time, and I felt her behind me. Not in the audience, not in the wings. Behind me. I turned slowly. Rachel Ashford stood 3 feet away, close enough to touch. Her face was gray, her eyes sunken, her white dress stained with something dark around the midsection. She looked at me with an intensity that made my bones ache. "What do you want?" I whispered. She raised one hand, extended one finger, and pressed it to my forehead. I see him in the scene study class 3 years ago. Mira is running a scene from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, playing Martha, and he's playing George, and she's good, she's really good, and he's looking at her with something that isn't acting. I see him after class trying to talk to her, suggesting coffee, a drink, another scene study, just the two of them. She says no gently at first, then firmly. She stops coming to class. He doesn't stop. I see him following her, learning her schedule, her address, her habits. I see the wall in his apartment, covered with photos of her, playbills from her shows, a timeline of her life rendered in red string and pushpins. I see him learning that she's understudying Rachel Ashford. I see the calculation in his eyes, the plan forming. If she's the understudy, she'll never go on. She'll never have her moment. Unless... I see him backstage at the Meridian. I see him waiting in Rachel's dressing room. I see the surprise on her face when she walks in and finds him there. "Who are you?" "I'm here for Mira." "I don't understand." I see the knife. I feel the knife. I feel 17 wounds and the cold floor, and the last thing I see is his face, his ordinary, forgettable face. And I know I'm dying so that she can have her moment, and then he can have his. I see him in the theater every night, every performance, sitting in the back row, watching her become what he always knew she could be, waiting for closing night, for his front row seat to the finale. I see the knife in his pocket, the same knife, my blood still on the blade because he wanted it that way, wanted it to be poetic, wanted it to be art. I see what he's going to do. Her dressing room, after the final bow, when everyone else is at the closing night party and she's alone, taking off her makeup, coming down from the high. He'll knock, she'll open the door, and he'll finish his masterpiece. I see everything. I see everything he is, and everything he's done, and everything he plans to do. And now she sees it too. I gasped, staggered backward, caught myself on the wall. The vision faded. Rachel was still there, still watching me with those dark, desperate eyes. I understood now. She hadn't been haunting me. She'd been warning me. And I knew his face. I knew it from years ago. Forgettable features, nervous smile, the way he'd looked at me during scene studies with something that wasn't quite right. I'd thought he was just awkward, intense, a little too method. I hadn't known he was building a shrine, planning a murder, 2 murders. "Thank you," I whispered. Rachel Ashford nodded once, the first human gesture she'd made. The stage manager called places. I walked on to the stage. I gave the performance of my life. Every line, every gesture, every breath. I poured everything I had into Medea's grief and rage and terrible resolve. The audience was silent, rapt, barely breathing. I could feel them leaning forward in their seats, hanging on every word. And during the final scene, when Medea takes the knife and makes her choice, I looked out at the audience and I saw him. 6th row, center, watching me with tears streaming down my face. He thought this was beautiful. He thought this was for him. I finished the scene, took my bow, accepted the standing ovation with a smile that felt like a mask. And when I walked off stage, I took the prop knife with me. My dressing room. I sat at my mirror, still in costume, the knife hidden in the folds of my robe. The sounds of celebration filtered through the walls, champagne corks, laughter, the giddy relief of a successful run. Someone would come looking for me soon. Someone would knock and ask why I wasn't at the party. I waited. The knock came at 11:47 p.m. "Come in," I said. The door opened, and there he was. "Mira." His voice was soft, reverent. "You were incredible tonight. Thank you." I didn't turn around, watched him in the mirror as he stepped inside, closed the door behind him. "Do I know you?" "We met once, a long time ago, scene study class." He moved closer. I could see his hand in his pocket, the shape of something there. "You probably don't remember." "I remember." He stopped. Something flickered in his eyes. "You were George," I said. "Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? You asked me for coffee afterward." "You said no." His voice was different now, harder. "You always said no. I wasn't interested. You didn't give me a chance." He pulled his hand from his pocket. The knife caught the light. Old, dark stains on the blade. "I've given you everything, made you a star, and you never even knew." I turned to face him. "I know now," I said. "Rachel showed me." His face went blank. "What?" "She's been here the whole time, every performance, getting closer, trying to warn me." I stood up. "She showed me everything. The shrine, the photos, what you did to her so I could have my moment." "That's impossible." "She showed me what you were going to do to me." He lunged. I'd spent 3 months watching Rachel Ashford's blocking, watching her move across the stage with precision and grace, knowing exactly where her body needed to be at every moment. I'd learned from the best. I stepped aside, let his momentum carry him past me, and as he stumbled, I drove the prop knife into his shoulder. He screamed, dropped his knife, fell against the dressing table, knocked over bottles and brushes. I grabbed his knife before he could recover, the real one, the one with Rachel's blood still on it, and I held it in front of me with both hands. "Don't move." He looked up at me, blood soaking through his shirt, shock and something else in his eyes, something that looked almost like admiration. "You're perfect," he whispered. "Even now, you're perfect." "I'm calling the police." I backed toward the door, keeping the knife between us, keeping my eyes on his face. My hand found the doorknob, and in the corner of the room, I saw her. Rachel Ashford, standing in the shadows, her white dress glowing faintly in the dim light. She was looking at me with something I hadn't seen on her face before. A smile. Small, tired, grateful. She raised one hand, a wave, a farewell. And then she faded like morning mist, like a dream you can't quite hold on to, like a woman who had finished what she needed to do. The police came, then the ambulances, then the reporters. The story was everywhere within hours. Crazed fan attacks actress in dressing room. Understudy fights off stalker who killed lead actress. Rachel Ashford's murder solved. Obsessed fan confesses. They called me brave. They called me a survivor. They talked about how I'd fought back, how I'd trusted my instincts, how I'd known something was wrong. I didn't correct them. I didn't tell them about the ghost who'd spent weeks trying to save my life. The woman I'd envied, resented, secretly wished harm upon. The woman who had every reason to hate me and instead had used her last connection to this world to protect me. Some stories aren't meant to be told. Some debts can never be repaid. I still act. I'm good at it. Better now than I was before, like something broke open inside me that night and let in light and darkness in equal measure. I've played Medea twice more at other theaters, and every time I stand on that stage with the knife in my hand, I think about choices and consequences and the terrible things we do for love. I never see her anymore. Rachel, she's gone. Wherever ghosts go when they're finished with their unfinished business. But sometimes, late at night, when the theater is empty and the ghosts of old performances hang in the air like dust motes, I stand on the stage and say her name. Thank you, Rachel. The words disappear into the darkness. No one answers, but I could swear sometimes that I feel something in return. A brush of cold air, a distant whisper, a sense of someone watching, not with malice or warning, but with something softer, something like peace, something like goodbye.